Welcome back to ArkansSense, where we try to make sense of the issues affecting Arkansans, and today we're going to talk about the Arkansas state flag. Recently, there was an attempt to change the meaning of the flag through legislative action. But where did our flag come from? What does it mean? And why was it changed just 10 years after it was originally adopted? While these might seem like simple questions, the answers provide a quick tour of Arkansas history, particularly some parts that might be a bit uncomfortable. As always, there's links in the description if you'd like to jump to one specific section. So, let's start by talking about Arkansas's vexillological, that's flag-related, history. Before European settlers, Arkansas was well settled by Native Americans, who set up largely along the Mississippi and Arkansas rivers and their tributaries. European explorers, conquerors, and settlers, who were much more concerned with land division and the planting of flags, started arriving in Arkansas in the 1500s. The first European settlement that we know of was Arkansas Post, set up in 1686 near where the Arkansas and Mississippi rivers meet. The post was established by Frenchman Henri de Tonty, making the French flag the first to fly over what would later become our state. About 80 years later, in 1762, the French and Spanish signed a treaty giving Arkansas, along with France's territory east of the Mississippi, to Spain. So, the Spanish flag became Arkansas flag number 2. But just a few decades later, in 1801, Napoleon, leader of France at the time, struck a bargain with Spain, making Arkansas French again. However, America wanted to be able to open up shipping lanes in New Orleans, and Napoleon wanted money. So, America purchased the Louisiana Territory in 1803, giving Arkansas its third flag, the American flag. But of course, Arkansas wasn't a state yet. The Louisiana Territory was carved into states gradually. When Louisiana became a state, the remaining land was renamed the Missouri Territory. Then that territory was divided up again into a northern and southern half. The southern half was named the Arkansas Territory. That's Arkansas with a W. The spelling was later changed from a W to an S to reflect the French roots of the name. The root word, by the way, is Arkansas with a C, which was the French name for the Native American Quapaw tribe. So our state is named for the Native Americans who first lived here. In 1821, the state of Missouri was carved out of the territory of Missouri, solidifying our northern border. Then the western half of the territory of Arkansas, spelled with an S now, was made unincorporated territory, and a further strip of it was made that way after a treaty with Native Americans guaranteed the border would only go as far as 100 paces east of Fort Smith. You may think I meant to say west, but actually the treaty says east, and the error is just so obvious it was ignored. Finally, on June 15, 1836, Arkansas was admitted into the U.S. as the 25th state overall and the third primarily carved out of the Louisiana Purchase. At the time when Arkansas gained its statehood, it had no flag of its own. State flags weren't nearly so big a deal at that point, so this continued on through the Civil War. The admission of Arkansas into the Confederacy meant another star on the CSA flag and a new flag flying over the Arkansas Capitol, but the state's troops needed a flag of their own when marching into battle. While individual battalions often made their own flags, by order of the CSA, Arkansas troops generally marched into battle under the flag of Missouri. Even after the Civil War ended, Arkansas again flew the flag of the USA, but not one of its own. But then, in 1910, construction began on a Navy battleship named the USS Arkansas. The Pine Bluff chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, a nonprofit group focused on historical preservation and patriotism, decided they wanted to present an Arkansas flag to the new ship. They contacted the Secretary of State to request one, only to find out it didn't exist. So they worked with the Secretary of State to put together a contest to design one. About 65 entries were received, and in early 1913 the committee chose the design submitted by Willie Hawker, a poet, school teacher, and member of the Pine Bluff chapter of the DAR. And this is what her design looked like. The contest also required entries to explain the meaning for their design, and here's how Hawker explained hers. The colors were meant to be the same red, white, and blue as the American flag. The 3 stars in the middle represented a few things. First, that Arkansas had belonged to 3 countries prior to its statehood, France, Spain, and the USA. Second, the 03 and 1803, the year of the Louisiana Purchase. And finally, that Arkansas had been the 3rd state carved out of the Louisiana Purchase. The diamond shape referred to Arkansas being the only place in the U.S. at the time where diamonds had been discovered. This was actually a relatively recent phenomenon. The first diamonds had only been found 7 years earlier, leading to a temporary Arkansas diamond craze. As it turns out, commercial diamond mining never actually took off in the state. But at the time it made sense to assume Arkansas would continue to be known for its diamonds. Finally, the 25 stars around the inner diamond represent Arkansas's admission as the 25th state, and the 2 adjacent stars in the left and right corners were meant to represent the twin states of Arkansas and Michigan, admitted to the U.S. in the same year and admitted as a pair to keep the balance between free and slave states. While the commission liked the design, they did make one request: the addition of the state's name. Hocker revised her design, and that flag was adopted by the General Assembly in 1913. So, Arkansas finally had a flag. But just 10 years later, the General Assembly met again and voted to add a 4th star to the flag, representing the Confederacy. Note that the CSA wasn't added to the list of countries whose flags had flown over Arkansas, but instead put in a new section all by itself. Quote, "The blue star above the word Arkansas is to commemorate the Confederate States of America." When the 4th star was first added, the stars were put in a square pattern, but a year later it was changed again to the design we still have to this day, 3 on bottom and 1 on top. Willie Hocker, designer of the original flag, was one of the people that asked for this change, saying that the square design messed up the meaning and symmetry of her original design. In fact, the language of the 1924 resolution acknowledges this. It begins, quote, "The present arrangement of stars in the state flag of Arkansas destroys the meaning of the 3 original stars." This meaning was restored by grouping the 3 stars together again, ensuring the 4th star wasn't seen as honoring one of the original Arkansas nations. Also, the Arkansas and Michigan dual state recognition was moved from the 2 outside stars to the 2 inside ones at this time. But why add a star to a flag that had just 10 years earlier been approved without any issue? That question is one that weighed heavy nearly 100 years later when a debate began about whether to change the flag again. Not its design, but its meaning. In 2014, Charles Blake was elected to represent Arkansas's 36th district in the Arkansas House of Representatives, and in 2017, Representative Blake filed a motion to update the official meaning of the state's flag, removing the reference to the Confederacy. The updated official definition would instead say, "The blue star above the word Arkansas is to commemorate the heritage and contribution of the Quapaw, Osage, and Caddo tribes and the other Native American nations who inhabited Arkansas before France or Spain exercised dominion over Arkansas." Again, this would not have changed the design of the flag, only the official definition of its symbolism. Representative Blake gave a number of reasons for wanting to change the symbolism over multiple tries to do so between 2017 and 2019. Many of them regard what the Confederacy did or didn't mean and aren't so much Arkansas specific. But Representative Blake also included an argument regarding the state of our state at the time when the new star was added. Representative Blake read off a long list of people who had been lynched in the years leading up to the star's addition. He also said that the Klan was at the height of its power in Arkansas at the time the star was changed. And he made this claim.
One could argue that the star was not added to the flag to honor the Confederate States of America. The star, in context of the time of 1924 in that period, was added to add presence and prominence of white supremacy in the state of Arkansas.
But is that true? How likely is it that Arkansas would have added a new star, at least in part, because of racism or the Klan? And what does the Klan have to do with all this? The Ku Klux Klan, also known as the KKK or just the Klan for short, are a white supremacist group who promote, sometimes with violence, the idea that white people who are Protestants, more or less non-Catholic Christians, are superior to every other race or religion. Historically, they have been most opposed to African Americans, and the Klan has seen the most support during periods when African Americans were gaining more rights or freedoms. The Klan also supports what it considers family values, which have included things like women being confined to traditional roles and, in the 1920s, prohibition. The Klan has essentially existed in three eras, referred to as the First, Second, and Third Klan, and the Klan is closely tied to the Civil War. The first Klan formed just after the end of the war and was started by 6 Confederate veterans. One of their prescripts was the emancipation of white men of the South, and the Klan's first leader was Nathan Bedford Forrest, a Confederate general famous for massacring a group of mostly black Northern soldiers after they had already surrendered. But the first Klan disintegrated in the 1870s, largely due to disorganization. The rise of the second Klan is often associated with the 1915 release of the film Birth of a Nation, which glorified Southern soldiers as well as the founding members and actions of the first Klan. The film was a major success and one of many possible reasons that the early 1920s in America saw a massive resurgence in Klan membership. And Arkansas was no stranger to racial tension and violence at the time. The state had a history of race riots, and in 1919, one of the largest race riots ever in America happened in Elaine, Arkansas, claiming the lives of an estimated 100 to 237 African Americans. In addition to their other causes, the Second Klan took a strong stand against unions and workers' strikes, which helped them tremendously in Arkansas. North Arkansas was particularly reliant on the Missouri and North Arkansas Railroad for the local economy, but in 1921, a wage cut and resentment over CEO's salary caused the rail workers to strike, and when a few of the striking workers began burning railroad bridges, rural Arkansas towns were rendered even more isolated. Anti-strike sentiment ran strong in the area, which helped the Klan gain power in northern Arkansas cities like Paragould, Jonesboro, Harrison, Heber Springs, and Marshall. At the same time, in the southern part of the state, the discovery of oil and natural gas led to the creation of boom towns like El Dorado, which were often largely lawless. Prostitution, gambling, and bootlegging ran rampant, and the Klan in these areas served as a sort of militia, keeping the peace while also enforcing their own code of ethics. Meanwhile, in Little Rock, membership in the Klan topped out at around 7,800, making it one of the largest chapters in America. And in 1922, the Klan claimed to have over 25,000 members in Arkansas. The state's population at the time was only 1.7 million, meaning, despite the fact that women weren't allowed, about 1 out of every 75 Arkansans had joined the Klan. The Klan in Arkansas made its way into politics through elimination primaries. When there was an election for a public office, the Klan would sometimes hold a vote to decide which of its members would run for the position or who the Klan would endorse. The agreement was that whoever won, all the members would vote for that person, preventing a possible vote split. Using these tactics, Klan members and Klan-backed candidates won every race in the 1922 Pulaski County primary election, including 5 members of the Arkansas General Assembly. Those 5 members, all Klansmen, went on to win their general elections as well, and the governor's secretary was also a prominent knight of the Klan. As historian Thomas Pegram put it, no major opposition to the hooded order was apparent in the Arkansas legislature, unlike in other southern states. Arkansas legislators acknowledged the power of the Klan, and critics kept their own counsel. It's after those elections, and in the midst of that racial turmoil, when the 44th Arkansas General Assembly began its work in January of 1923, and this is the session during which the 4th star was added to the flag. Historian Charles Alexander argues that while we know the delegates from Pulaski County were Klan members, no other members of the General Assembly were open about their Klan membership. Alexander also points out that there was no really contentious issue during the 1923 session which would have given away which members were Klansmen and which weren't. Regardless of the Klan's level of involvement, the Arkansas legislature in 1923 was almost exclusively Democrats, who at this point were still the party of supporting white Southerners. So, if the question is whether the star was added by a combination of Klansmen and others likely sympathetic to the Klan's views, the answer is yes. But any discussion of the exact motivation is complicated by a lack of contemporary accounts of the debate and discussion around adding the star. Many modern sources use wording claiming that the star had simply been forgotten by the original design and adding it was a natural fix. However, there appears to be no primary source for this claim either. And what complicates all of it just a tad bit more is that none of this was actually official. The 1913, 1923, and 1924 votes on the flag design were concurrent resolutions. That is, things both houses of the General Assembly agreed on, but weren't actually laws. The design of the flag wasn't made law until 1987 when it passed through both houses and was signed by then Governor Clinton. To be clear, this new law wasn't meant to make any kind of statement. Arkansas was celebrating its 150th anniversary in 1986, but the legislature didn't meet that year. So 1985 and 1987 were both years that saw lots of laws and proclamations meant to honor the state in some way, including formalizing a number of our state's symbols. So this brings us back to now. Representative Blake's bill to change the meaning of the star was voted on twice, the second time in March of 2019. The bill saw broad support from Democratic legislators. Governor Hutchinson said he would sign it if it passed, and it even garnered support from the Quapaw Nation, one of the tribes that would be honored by name under the new legislation and the one that our state is named after. But Republicans, who largely controlled the General Assembly at the time, were mostly either against it or on the fence. The bill needed 11 votes from the 20-member House State Agencies and Governmental Affairs Committee in order to make it to the full Arkansas House of Representatives, but it only got 5. All 4 Democrats on the committee, plus 1 Republican. Meanwhile, 10 Republicans voted against, and 5 more chose not to vote. A few months later, Representative Blake retired from the House of Representatives, but other Democratic members of both the House and Senate are considering taking up the bill again. There are also other ideas and proposals for how to change or update the Arkansas flag. We could, of course, just leave the flag as it is, and if we do so, we could change nothing, we could redefine the 4 stars' meaning, or we could even do what one Republican House member has proposed and remove all official definitions of symbolism from the flag. We could also change the flag, perhaps reverting back to one of the 2 original designs. Or maybe it's time to make a new flag. That would quickly kill the Confederate controversy, and we could even hold a statewide contest again. Now that you know the story of our flag, you can make up your own mind and contact your representatives to tell them what you think and how they should vote the next time the flag question comes up. The flag represents all Arkansans, after all. It's only right we get a say in how we're represented. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks also to our sponsors at Patreon who keep this channel going. Patreon is a subscription service where you decide how much you want to donate each month to keep this channel going. Different subscription levels come with different perks, from getting your name in the credits to picking the topic of an episode. Thanks to patrons Zach Green, Jordan Little, and Don Hughes, as well as everyone you see on the screen now. And thank you for watching. See you next time for more ArkansSense.